Well, good morning, Sun Hills Church. Happy Friday to everyone. We're back with our next installment of our Friday morning devotional from the Sermon on the Mount. And last week we looked at the first part of Matthew chapter 7, which says, "Don't judge or you'll be judged. And with the measure you use, it'll be measured to you." And now we're looking at the following words of Jesus that have to do with the speck and the plank. But we should understand that after Jesus says, don't judge, or when he says don't judge, the people he's talking to, sometimes, you've experienced this, I know I have, sometimes when people are very judgmental and condemning, they may claim to be doing it for people's own good. Like, you can't be soft on sin. You got to tell people, what's wrong. And I think some people might actually be doing it because they want to help, and others might just be saying that because they want to help. But for the purposes of this devotional, we're going to assume that the people who are being judgy and condemning actually want to help. They're doing it because they want to help. They want people to know that, it's not right to live in a life of sin, and it's not right to just, be rebelling against God. And if they really want to find life, they're going to find it in a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And that's where they're going to find real life. Jesus said, "I come that they may have life and have it to the full." So let's assume that those who are judgmental and condemning, let's assume that they're doing it because they want to help. And so Jesus is saying, okay, that's not the way to help. That's not helping by going around being judgmental and condemning. And the problem is with that, if you do that, you end up living in your own condemnation, because you cannot survive the measure you use on others. If you're telling everybody else they're going to hell because they got something wrong, as soon as you start thinking about your own mortality and you've got stuff wrong, you're going to be sending yourself to hell as well. And so that's not the right approach. And so in these words, Jesus is going to tell us, if we really want to help people, we have to change our approach. We have to, number one, get ourselves right, make sure we're in the right place. And then number two, we have to correct our approach. So we have to have the right approach, and we have to have ourselves right. And then we'll be in a position to help others. Now, if you didn't know that this text was about someone trying to help others, let me read it and just listen and see if that's not clear to you. And so he says, "Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your eye, or your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not give to dogs what is sacred or holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn and attack you." So we're going to look at both of those. The first part is we've got to get ourselves right if we're going to help people. And you notice this is to help people. Trying to get the speck out, he says, well, if you want to get the speck out, you got to do this first. Then you will be able to see clearly to help them. This is all about helping others. And so what's he talking about with this? You see the speck and you got a plank. We have to deal with that first, okay? And so remember, if we're talking about people who are judging, condemning, we're talking about people who are looking at people's sin, and they're looking at it saying, "Oh, that's a sin. You're condemned because you got something wrong. You're going to go to hell. Unless you fix that." So we're talking about looking at people's sin. So the speck and the wood, the plank, this is all about sin. And so let's hear Jesus saying, why are you looking at the sin your brother has, which he calls a speck, and not looking at the plank or log in your own eye? Okay? And so just to be clear about that, it doesn't mean that I have that much more sin than my brother. It doesn't mean that. It just means that, and we need to, of course we know this, that my perspective and my understanding of my own sin, or my access to how great it is, I have a lot greater access to what's wrong with me than I have to what's wrong with you, right? I mean, I can stare at your life, from a distance and be able to see things that I think, well, that's wrong and that's wrong. But you're inside you, and you know you, and you not only know you, what you do in public and what you do, to others that's wrong. You know you, who you are in private, and even you know you, who you are in your deepest thoughts. And that's way more than I know. And I know me way more than you do. You may see me and say, oh, that Randy, he's a big jerk because I see this. Well, I'll tell you, I'm way worse than that. Because at least in my view, because I see it all, or most of it, everything I'm aware of, way more than you see. And so this is what we're talking about when we talk about specks and planks. How can I possibly be looking at the amount of, sin or problems in your life and think you're condemned for that, and not then also be condemning myself for this big giant amount? You can't do it. And so Jesus is saying, if I want to help you get that speck out, I first got to deal with my own sin. Okay? And also there's something funny here, because we just have to picture it. I always like to picture you're in a room full of people, and you see across the room with your good eye somebody bothered with a speck in their eye, and with this telephone pole sticking out of your head, out of your bad eye, you start beating your way through the crowd, knocking people down, trying to get to this other person with the claim that you happen to be good at getting wood out of eyes, and you'd like to offer your assistance. And how ridiculous it is to think that anybody wants your help, right? Because you don't look like you know how to get wood out. And I think Jesus is saying, when you walk around self-condemned and your focus is on sin so that you're not only condemning others, but you're living in your own condemnation, there's just no way you have anything to offer anybody. You want to offer somebody help for getting rid of sin? You're not the guy. You've got to get yourself right first. And so there's only two ways to do that, to get that plank out, to get rid of sin. Only two ways that I can think of. And one is stop sinning. Well, not only that, not only stop sinning, but somehow erase all the sin you're already guilty of. And then, okay, that's one way. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you're going to accomplish that. The other way is to accept the grace of God and his forgiveness, to know that he loves you and knows you're a sinner, but is willing to forgive you and will forgive you and wants to forgive you and does forgive when you approach him for that forgiveness. And so that's only two ways. And so if we want to help others get the speck out, or get the sin out of their view so that it's not condemning them, if we want to help them, first we have to be saved. We have to know we have forgiveness. We have to be forgiven. We have to have some kind of hope, some kind of joy in our salvation. And then we have something to offer. Then when we walk across the room with joy in our smile in our eyes, and we see somebody who's downcast because of sin, we have something to offer, some hope. So that's getting ourselves right. Stop focusing on the sin. Jesus took care of that. Accept the forgiveness of God, and then you'll be able to help others. The second part of it is don't give to dogs what is sacred, and don't cast your pearls before pigs. And in this, rather than thinking Jesus is calling people names, I'm going to go with Dallas Willard on this one in his book, Divine Conspiracy, which is thick in more than one way. But in his view, and I like it, I think he's right. In his view, instead of having Jesus call people names, let's just understand that Jesus is saying, if you're the one responsible for feeding the dogs and all you're doing is throwing biblical literature in there, Bible tracts and stuff, after a few days or maybe weeks, you walk into the kennel to feed them their sacred material, and you're going to be the only meat they've seen in weeks, and they're going to tear you up. So I think this is what Dallas Willard's point was. If you're the one responsible for feeding the dogs or the pigs, it's your job to know what they can eat and give them the appropriate food. And pigs don't, pearls are important, but not to pigs. And they may eat them, but there's no value for them. And sacred literature is really important, but not for pigs. for dogs. And so you got to figure out what people can eat. And so if you want to help people not only be right yourself with God, but in order to help get them right with God, it's your responsibility to figure out what it is that they can use and what they don't use. And we see this in Jesus. I have to believe that Jesus was not hanging around with sinners all those times, so much that the Pharisees were always mad at him because he's always eating and drinking with sinners. It seemed like it was more than just one time. It's just hard to believe that while he was doing that, the whole time, he was just attacking them and telling them how, mad God is at them and they're all going to hell. It's just hard to see Jesus doing that. Instead, I think he found ways to communicate with them, ways to be among them, not saying their sin's okay, but ways of being among them to communicate God's love, even to sinners. And that's what I think Jesus was doing. He was able to feed them milk if milk was required. And we see it with that woman caught in adultery. And I know I take a look at her a lot, but I think we need to learn from Jesus's attitude with her, that he was very careful. It's not that he didn't say sin was bad. He certainly did. After showing her how much he cared about her and wanted to defend her, he did say, now go and leave this life of sin. I don't think he said it in a mean way. I think he said it in a loving way. This is not good for you. This is not helping you. Go and leave that behind. And then you'll find that life. And so this is our responsibility. If, when we have little babies, we don't throw a big old steak on the plate and say, there you go, and hope they can gum enough nutrients out of that steak. Whatever they get, they begin with milk and then they get mushed up food. And this is, that's the responsibility of a parent, of a mom, and even of a dad. And so it looks like this is what Jesus is saying. If you really want to help people, then the way to help is first make sure you have the good news to share. And then when you share the good news, make sure you're feeding people according to what they can receive. And if anybody ever helped you see the gospel and come to understand the gospel, just remember what they did for you. And be inspired and motivated to look to help someone else as well. I hope that was helpful for you, and I pray you have a great Friday. God bless, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.